In one way, the extinction of Neanderthals as a separate population may not simply represent loss. It may represent stabilization. A world in which only one human species survived avoided a prolonged evolutionary competition between partially compatible lineages. The blending that did occur left traces, small percentages of Neanderthal DNA in most populations today. But the boundary eventually dissolved in one direction. The Neanderthal lineage, as a distinct entity, ended. We are accustomed to romanticizing them now, to sculpting them into misunderstood cousins with soulful eyes and buried flowers. Yet the bones tell another story. The proportions, the muscle attachments, the brow ridges like storm fronts over deep-set eyes. They were not simply different. They were formidable, and in a world already savage, they were perhaps the most savage thing in it. Imagine encountering one not in a museum reconstruction, but in a twilight forest 40,000 years ago. The sun is low, the air is cold. You hear something moving in the brush, something heavy. When he steps into view, he is shorter than you expect, but broader, impossibly broad. The chest is barrel-shaped, the shoulders thick as oak roots. The forearms are corded with strength developed not in a gym, but in survival. This is a being built for impact, built to wrestle megafauna, built to endure glacial winters without complaint. His bones are dense, almost shock-resistant. Every joint speaks of torque and leverage. If modern humans are distance runners, lean and persistent, Neanderthals were shock troops of the Ice Age. Their skeletons reveal muscle attachment sites that dwarf our own. The ridges and crests where tendons anchored are enlarged, exaggerated. This is not subtle strength. It is crushing strength. The kind that could drive a spear into a mammoth's flank at close range. The kind that could break bones in combat. When anthropologists estimate their grip force, it is consistently higher than ours. Their hands were not delicate instruments for typing or threading needles. They were clamps. Their legs were thick, their femurs curved and reinforced. Even their rib cages suggest lungs capable of drawing in vast gulps of cold, thin air. They were compact engines, designed to burn hot in freezing climates. Furthermore, new genetic findings about Neanderthal modern human interbreeding do more than illuminate human-Neanderthal mating patterns. They subtly sharpen a deeper question that has lingered ever since the Neanderthal genome was first sequenced. What kind of species were they, socially and biologically? And what does it mean that they are gone? The recent research points to a striking asymmetry in ancient encounters. As one report summarizes, scientists found gene flow occurred predominantly between Neanderthal males and anatomically modern human females. Another article explains that interbreeding was mostly between male Neanderthals and female humans. That directional bias matters because it leaves a genomic fingerprint. Modern humans today carry small fragments of Neanderthal DNA across much of the genome, but the X chromosome stands out. It is what geneticists call an archaic desert, meaning it contains almost no Neanderthal ancestry. That absence is not trivial. It is not random noise. It reflects structure, social, biological, or both. One of the researchers of the study said, mating preferences provided the simplest explanation. Another noted that it seems that one direction was viewed as better or less worse than the other. These are cautious statements, but they carry weight. They imply that when modern humans and Neanderthals met, their interactions were not symmetrical. Something about the social dynamics, reproductive success, or biological compatibility favored one pairing direction over the other. The X chromosome is central here. Because females carry 2 X chromosomes and males only 1, the direction of mating dramatically affects how ancestry persists. If Neanderthal males fathered children with modern human females more often than the reverse, fewer Neanderthal X chromosomes would enter the modern human gene pool. Meanwhile, more human X chromosomes would enter Neanderthal populations. That is exactly what the study found, a mirror image pattern. Neanderthal X chromosomes show an excess of modern human DNA, while the human X shows depletion of Neanderthal ancestry. Now consider what this implies when paired with another evolutionary principle, hybrid male disadvantage. In many species crosses, hybrid males are less fertile or less viable than hybrid females. If even mild incompatibilities existed between Neanderthals and modern humans, and they had been separated for roughly 600,000 years, then hybrid male fertility could have been reduced. Earlier studies already suggested that Neanderthal DNA is particularly depleted near genes involved in male reproduction. Selection appears to have scrubbed certain Neanderthal variants from the modern human lineage. If hybrid males struggled while hybrid females reproduced normally, the long-term consequence would be a gradual filtering of Neanderthal X-linked material from expanding human populations. In other words, the extinction of Neanderthals may not have required dramatic conquest or annihilation. It may have unfolded through demographic asymmetry and reproductive filtering. That brings us to a more uncomfortable thought. When two closely related human species meet and one disappears, we tend to frame it as tragedy, the loss of a sister lineage. But what if the very dynamics revealed by the genome suggest that coexistence was unstable? What if the boundary between these groups was semi-permeable, but not fully compatible? From that perspective, Neanderthal extinction was not a moral event, but an evolutionary resolution. It allowed one lineage, ours, to consolidate. It reduced hybrid instability. It eliminated long-term reproductive asymmetry between parallel human species. And it left behind just enough genetic contribution to enrich the surviving population without sustaining dual lineages. Sometimes extinction is not merely loss. Sometimes it is the closing of a biological chapter that could not remain open indefinitely. And in the quiet honesty of evolutionary hindsight, one can admit that the disappearance of such a rival cleared the path for the fragile, inventive, cooperative species that would go on to build civilizations. The Ice Age giants are gone. The lighter, more flexible branch endured. History, as always, was written by the survivors. Neanderthals were not primitive caricatures. They were intelligent, tool-using, fire-making hominins who survived Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, yet their populations were small, fragmented, and genetically constrained. Modern humans, by contrast, expanded explosively. They formed large, connected networks across continents. If even subtle reproductive disadvantages existed for Neanderthal-derived males within modern human populations, that alone could tilt the evolutionary balance. We modern humans like to think of ourselves as the apex predator because we survived. But survival does not necessarily mean superiority in raw combat. It may mean flexibility, social complexity, innovation, and sheer numbers. When Homo sapiens entered Europe, they did not confront a weak or dwindling species. They encountered a population that had thrived in harsh climates for hundreds of thousands of years. A population that knew the land intimately, that understood seasonal rhythms, that had mastered close-range hunting. If there was conflict, and many suspect there was, it would not have been a gentle displacement. It would have been tense, territorial, dangerous. The thought experiment is unsettling. Two human species sharing overlapping ranges, similar enough to interbreed, different enough to compete. One leaner, perhaps more numerous, more networked across vast territories. The other stronger, more physically imposing, more immediately intimidating. In small-scale skirmishes, who would you bet on? A Neanderthal with a thrusting spear and a lifetime of upper body conditioning, or a modern human of average build? Our advantage may not have been in the duel. It may have been in the coalition, in the ability to form larger alliances, to coordinate across distances, to outmaneuver rather than overpower. There is a reason so many popular depictions oscillate between portraying Neanderthals as noble giants and terrifying brutes. The fossil record feeds both impulses. The thickness of their bones and the breadth of their faces are objectively striking. Their brow ridges cast literal shadows. Their mid-facial projection gives them a forward-thrusting presence. When you overlay musculature onto those skulls, the result is not dainty. It is imposing. Even in death, their remains project a certain heaviness. And yet it is important not to slip into caricature. Strength and danger are not moral failings. They are adaptations. In an Ice Age Europe filled with cave bears, hyenas, and woolly rhinoceroses, fragility was not an option. A gracile skeleton might be more energy efficient, but it is less forgiving when crushed under a charging animal. Neanderthals were built for a world that demanded resilience. If they were more aggressive, it may have been because their environment rewarded immediate, forceful responses. Still, one cannot ignore the implications for coexistence. If Neanderthals were physically dominant at the individual level, the long-term trajectory of human civilization might have looked very different had they persisted in significant numbers. Our species thrives on specialization and division of labor. We build intricate social hierarchies and abstract institutions. Would those systems have developed in the same way if, within every generation, there existed another human species capable of outlifting, outrunning in bursts and outmuscling us? Would territorial disputes have escalated more frequently into lethal encounters? Would mixed communities have been stable or perpetually tense? The archaeological record shows that Neanderthals were capable toolmakers, hunters, and possibly symbolic thinkers. They buried their dead. They used pigments. They crafted stone tools with precision. They were not intellectually inert, but their technological trajectory appears different from ours. They did not, as far as current evidence suggests, develop the same rapid pace of innovation seen in Upper Paleolithic Homo sapiens. Whether this reflects cognitive differences, demographic constraints, or simple chance remains debated. What is less debated is that they were extremely well adapted to their niche. There is also mounting evidence that their visual systems may have been tuned differently. The shape of the orbit, the size of the eye sockets, the architecture of the skull imply that more neural real estate may have been devoted to visual processing, particularly in low-light conditions. Whether or not this translates directly to superior night vision in the cinematic sense, it suggests adaptation to long, dim winters and shadowed forests. Picture them moving at dusk, comfortable in a light level that would leave us hesitant. We modern humans rely on fire and artificial illumination. They may have relied on eyes trained for gloom. Then there is durability. Neanderthal skeletons frequently show healed fractures, serious ones, broken ribs, shattered limbs, cranial injuries that would sideline a modern athlete permanently. And yet they healed. Not only healed, but often returned to activity. Their bones exhibit remodeling that suggests repeated trauma over a lifetime. They were not fragile, they were not cautious. They absorbed punishment as a matter of routine. Some researchers have compared their injury patterns to those of modern rodeo riders, a statistical echo of lives lived in close quarters with massive, dangerous animals. They were accustomed to impact, to collision, to violence, both accidental and intentional. Testosterone likely played a role in shaping this physiology. The pronounced brow ridges, the robust mandibles, the sheer thickness of the cranial vault all hint at hormonal environments different from ours. While it would be simplistic to reduce their entire biology to a hormone profile, the cumulative evidence suggests a population skewed toward high physical aggression and competitiveness. This does not mean they were mindless brutes. It means they were optimized for confrontation. In a Pleistocene world of predators and rival bands, that optimization made sense. When climates shifted abruptly during the late Pleistocene, adaptability became paramount. Smaller, more interconnected populations may have weathered environmental instability better. A body optimized for cold may struggle in warming conditions. A hunting strategy focused on large game may falter as ecosystems reorganize. If Neanderthals were specialists, then their very strengths could have become liabilities in a rapidly changing world. Their durability and power, so effective in glacial landscapes, might not translate seamlessly to new ecological realities. From this perspective, their extinction is less a moral victory and more a historical inevitability shaped by contingency. But the provocative question lingers. If they had survived alongside us into recorded history, would our cities feel the same? Would law enforcement, military structures, and daily life be subtly or profoundly different? Would we measure ourselves against them constantly, aware that there exists a branch of humanity built like a fortress? It is uncomfortable to admit that part of our relief may stem from comparison. We are the strongest human species left because we are the only one left. There is no parallel lineage whose physical presence dwarfs ours. There is no rival hominin walking through our streets with shoulders twice as broad and bones twice as thick. Evolution narrowed the field. The Pleistocene stage once hosted multiple human experiments. Now it hosts one. And perhaps that singularity allowed us to redirect energy away from interspecies competition and toward internal development. Freed from the need to compete with another human form optimized for brute force, we doubled down on cognition, cooperation, and technology. We built tools not to match muscle with muscle, but to transcend muscle entirely. We created distance weapons, then machines, then digital networks. The kind of strength Neanderthals embodied became less central to survival in a world increasingly shaped by abstraction. There is tragedy in their disappearance. They were a unique expression of humanity, a testament to evolutionary creativity. Their extinction erased a perspective, a physiology, a way of being human that had persisted for hundreds of millennia. But evolution is indifferent to sentiment. It selects, it filters, it prunes. The qualities that made Neanderthals formidable did not ultimately secure their future. In acknowledging that, we can hold two thoughts simultaneously. We can respect their resilience and adaptability in a brutal Ice Age world. And we can recognize that a planet shared indefinitely by two closely related, physically unequal human species might have been fraught with tension and danger. The Pleistocene was not a gentle place. Its inhabitants were not gentle by default. It may be that our survival was not just a triumph of intellect over brawn, but a narrowing of possibilities. The world we inhabit, dense with cities, governed by institutions, structured by symbolic systems, arose in the absence of competitors who embodied a different evolutionary solution. Had Neanderthals endured, perhaps we would still be looking over our shoulders at dusk, aware that in the half-light, another kind of human moved with confidence. Instead, their bones lie in caves and museums, silent reminders of a time when humanity was plural. We inherited the earth alone. Whether that is cause for celebration or sober reflection depends on the lens through which we look. But there is no denying the raw power etched into those fossils. They were strong. They were durable. They were, by all physical accounts, dangerous in ways we are not. If Neanderthals had survived as a separate lineage into the Holocene, we would be looking at a world with two distinct human species sharing territory. History shows that even minor cultural differences among Homo sapiens can generate conflict, exclusion, and hierarchy. Imagine the friction between two visibly distinct human species with partial reproductive compatibility. The genomic evidence already hints at asymmetry in mating integration. That suggests underlying social tension or structural imbalance. That outcome may have prevented deeper biological fragmentation. If hybrid males experienced even slight fertility reductions, as theory predicts, then maintaining two coexisting human species could have produced persistent reproductive inefficiencies. Natural selection tends to resolve such instability. It favors coherence over long-term semi-compatibility. There is a forbidden thought that occasionally surfaces in quiet moments, a thought most people are too polite to say aloud. What if it is a good thing that the Neanderthals went extinct? What if their disappearance was not merely a tragic footnote in human evolution, but a turning point that allowed the world to become something softer, more navigable, less perilous?